How's it going, guys? I'm Brandon, and today we're going to be talking about The Wanting Seed, written by Anthony Burgess, who also wrote A Clockwork Orange. The book is a comedic dystopian novel based in London, which, according to Burgess's description, is now approximately this size. The Wanting Seed opens up with Beatrice Joanna, who Burgess describes as a handsome woman of 29, handsome in the old way, a way no longer approved in a woman of her class. The straight, graceless, waistless black dress could not describe the moving opulence of her haunches, nor could the splendid curve of her bosom be altogether flattened by its constraining bodice. Her cider-coloured hair was worn according to the fashion, straight and fringe. Her face was dusted with plain white powder. She wore no perfume, perfume being for men only. Still, and despite the natural pallor of her grief, she seemed to glow and flame with health, and what was to be disapproved strongly, the threat of fecundity. The book follows Beatrice and two brothers who she's in a cheating love triangle with. In the first few pages, she's at the Ministry of Fertility as she's just lost her child. The doctor is about to turn her child into plant fertilizer, and this is what was said. "All I want," she sniffed, "is my son back again." "You'll get over that," said Dr. Acheson cheerfully. "Everyone does." He watched benevolently the two black men carry the casket down the corridor towards the lift. 21 stories below, their van waited, and think, he added, think of this in national terms, in global terms. One mouth less to feed, one more half kilo of phosphorus pentoxide to nourish the earth. In a sense, you know, Miss Fox, you'll be getting your son back again. He led the way to his tiny office. So, this is where the dystopia starts. This is actually part of a quote-unquote motherhood ration enforced by the government. So let's talk about that government. The government in this book is a Malthusian one-party state who don't allow debate. They believe they've conquered God, and therefore praying is illegal and wine is illegal. Because they want to reduce the population, they even go so far as having a whole faction of the government to encourage queerness called the Homo Sex Institute. Straight people in this society will actually lie and pretend to be gay just to get by, to get brownie points from the state. I'll now cut into a video from YouTube of some Americans who dramatized a section of this book.
What gets a man a job these days is not merely his qualifications. It's not how many degrees one has or how good one is at whatever it is that one does. What it comes down to is family, Mr. Fox.
My family, sir.
And I don't mean whether your family was up in the world or not. I mean how much of it there is or was.
I don't see how this applies to me.
Well, it has to do with mathematics, Mr. Fox. Not with eugenics or social status. Now, I know as well as you that this is all perfectly absurd, but society is changing and adapting, and that's just the way that it is. Now, after reviewing your file, I see that you come from a family of four. Four. You have a sister in China, you have a brother in Springfield, Ohio. There's your brother, Derek Fox, who's homosexual, very highly placed in the government. And you, Mr. Fox, who have a wife and a child.
Not anymore. My son died in hospital this morning.
Dead? Oh. Very young, I suppose.
Yes.
Well, his being dead doesn't really alter things as far as you're concerned. One birth per family, alive or dead, it really doesn't matter. You've broken no laws. You've done nothing you theoretically shouldn't have. You're entitled to marry if you want. You can have one birth per family. But the best in our society don't. They just don't.
So I guess you can kind of see the intensity of it all. One other thing to mention is if you get pregnant in this society, you can be arrested. Let's look at another page now where the values of the society are kind of stated. It's the old story, liberalism prevails, and liberalism means laxness. We leave it to education and propaganda and free contraceptives, abortion clinics, and condolences. We encourage non-productive forms of sexual activity. We like to kid ourselves that people are good enough and wise enough to be aware of their responsibilities. But what happens? There was the case only a few weeks ago of a couple in Western Province who'd had 6 children. 6, I ask you, and all alive too. A very old-fashioned couple, God followers. They talked about fulfilling God's will and all that nonsense. One of our officials had a word with them and tried to make them see sense. Imagine, 8 bodies in a flat smaller than this. But they wouldn't see sense. Apparently they had a copy of the Bible. Dog knows where they got it from. Have you ever seen one of those? No, well, it's an old religious book full of old smut. The big sin is to waste your seed, and if God loves you, he fills your house with kids. The language is very old-fashioned too. Anyway, they kept appealing to all this, all the time, talking about fertility and the barren fig trees getting cursed and so on. Derek shuddered with genuine horror. They were a quite young couple too. What happened to them? What could happen? They were told there was a law limiting offspring to 1 birth only, dead or alive, but they said it was a wicked law. If God didn't intend man to be fruitful, they said, why did he implant the instinct for increase in him? They were told that God was an outmoded concept, but they wouldn't take that. They were told they had a duty to their neighbours, and they conceded that, but they couldn't see how limitation of family constituted a duty, a very difficult case. And nothing happened to them. Nothing much. They were fined. They were warned against having any more kids. They were given contraceptive pills and ordered to attend the local birth control clinic for instruction. But they seemed quite unrepentant. So we'll cut there. The police are also pretty authoritarian. They're known as the Grey Boys because they wear grey cheese cutter hats. This police force is explicitly and intentionally homosexual, and they all carry short rifles. There's a whole faction of this police force to police the population, called the Population Police. And at one stage, they beat up Tristan, but it's okay because just like our modern day British police, these police like to dance as well. One extremely fascinating part of the book is how the government control the food supply. So, read a section here. Beatrice Joanna served him with a cutlet of reconstituted vegetable dehydrate, cold. He ate with fair appetite. Then she gave him a slice of Synthelac pudding. Have a nut, she offered when he'd finished. A nut was a nutrition unit, creation of the Ministry of Synthetic Food. So, I got another part as well about the synthetic food situation. Here we go. The rations had been cut yet again, with neither warning nor apology, from the twin ministries responsible. Beatrice Joanna received and paid for 2 blocks of brown vegetable dehydrate, legumin, a large white tin of Synthelac, compressed sheets of cereal, a blue bottle of nuts or nutrition units. So, yeah. Another tool that the government seem to use to control the food supply is blight, causing sterile poultry. So, here said, this blight seems to be sweeping the world and the hens won't lay. A wet August and a parched September, but the sickness of the world's grain crops seemed to ride like an aircraft above the weather. It was a blight never known before, its configuration under the microscope not cognate with any other pattern of disease. And it proved resistant to all the poisons that the global agricultural authority could devise. But it was not only rice, maize, barley, oats and wheat that were affected. Fruit fell off the trees, and the hedges stricken with a sort of gangrene. Potatoes and other roots became masses of black and blue mud. And then there was the animal world. Worms, coccidiosis, scallyleg, marble bone disease, foul cholera, prolapse of the oviduct vent, gleat, curled toe paralysis, slipped hock disease. These were just a few of the maladies that struck the hen batteries and turned them into feathery morgues. Shoals of rotting fish corpses were washed ashore on the northeast coast during early October, and the rivers stank. I mean, what a read, eh? What a read. Later, the society sinks even deeper and they turn to cannibalism. Not the main characters in the book, but the society turns to cannibalism. Cannibalism and war. A war propped up by illusion where you're not allowed to ask questions. And it's the stories of these three characters and how they navigate their lives in this dystopian society that holds the book together. So in conclusion, I'll put it to you. 60 years after Anthony Burgess's publication of this book, did he get any of his predictions right? Do the government want to reduce the population? Are the government fucking with the food supply? And is our police force full of authoritarian, raving homosexuals? That's all for today. All the best. Catch you next time.